Another thing is the recognition, and this I will take credit for, because you will never find any discussion in role playing, text or socially, about this before I did it. Excuse me. But
Yeah, no problem.
but it is that the imagined activity of role playing, the imagined experience, and the routines that we use, dice, whatever it is, I don't care. Whatever it
Yeah,
is that we use as part of that imaginative experience, all of it, every bit of it, is enclosed in the direct social interactions of the people who are doing it.
I agree. I
Right,
agree.
but you should recognize that before I really pushed hard for this concept, before I did that, the prevailing and standard idea was that the humans and all of their social interactions are over here, and the imagination and the routines of play are over here in a sort of pure way.
Yes, I see your
Right.
point. I
And so
absolutely agree that
this
we
could
cannot
only,
separate.
the idea was that this could only interfere with that.
Yeah, I
So you
agree
had to
that
keep
to
them apart.
separate
Mm-hmm.
the game from the process of playing it, they cannot be separated
Right.
because the game exists to serve it and guide.
Exactly. So therefore, that to me is probably the most important point. Anything else that I may say about how role playing works and what it is and things like that is all just subroutines of that basic point.
Yeah,
And so, those, to answer your question, if there's anything that I want actually to have contributed to in the history of the hobby, it would be those two things.
I have a third one to add. I think that maybe it's my interest that I am a computer engineer with some philosophical interests. But I believe that the GNS was revolutionary for its time, mostly because it set the foundations and you realize the importance of being able to discuss our hobby in a more theoretical way.
There are people who would say that's actually the worst thing that I have contributed to the hobby. But the argument that I would make is, first of all, thank you, but also that what you're talking about is the first practical application
Precisely.
of the point that I made earlier. It's the first practical application, which basically says, okay, so if we have these social endeavors, these social interactions among people, and we're going to do this thing together, what for?
I
What for
agree.
exactly? And that,
The GNS, sorry to interrupt,
yeah,
the GNS might be a bit outdated and might have some flaws, but I think that starting this process of uh, making a more systematic approach to the way that we talk about RPGs is extremely important.
well,
I think
people have tried that for a while. I was not the first, but I feel at least that my efforts were visible. And again, the
they
timing
were.
was important because of the internet and the demonstrable failure of the current system of sales of games. So the timing was good for a really hard punch into that topic. Um, so okay, those are the. I hope that kind of answers those questions. Is there
It does.
okay?
It does. All right. So, have you ever been to Greece?
I have not been to Greece. I have been to Italy and a number of times. And as you probably know from Shahida, I would greatly desire to accept the invitations that I've received to visit Lebanon, which is now
Yes.
that I'm living here, to me is, I mean, being able to visit any of these places by American standards, all of
Yeah.
this to me is incredibly close. I mean, it's
Yeah.
it's
I know.
ridiculous
It's
to me how
like two states
close.
away.
Right, exactly. I mean, it's I can throw a rock and hit Berlin from here, and
Yeah.
so in fact, when I was in Italy at one point and I was talking about Lebanon, and the people were responding, they were saying, "Oh, but that's so far away." And I was like,
No.
I can see it from here. What are you talking about? And so, anyway, the point is that I would love to, and that um, one of my great goals in moving
Yeah.
here and in beginning Adept Play as a Swedish business, one of my great goals is to spend considerable time in many, many different locations. I've recently been very, very happy to make contact with and play games with a community of role players in Istanbul. And
Great.
not only are they really, really, really good, it's a very welcoming group of people. And so, when the time and the moment and the activity is right, then I'm more than happy to come
Yeah.
basically anywhere
Yeah.
that I'm invited.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. That would be great. Okay. So, another personal question: pizza or burger?
Say that again, please.
Pizzas or burgers?
Pizzas or burger?
That's a very
Well, we
deep
have to
philosophical
define a
one.
few things. I am happy to say that I have left a lot of sort of these cultural interests behind, but it's very hard to give up Chicago pizza.
Okay.
Now, I've done it before. I lived in Chicago for years and years, and then I moved to Florida. And the availability of Chicago pizza
In
was,
Florida.
well, anywhere, really. I mean, you can even go to a restaurant that says Chicago style pizza, and it's not it. And
Yeah.
so, anyway, so I very keenly felt that because I had I had become, you know, a true consumer of Chicago pizza.
All
And
right.
so I have to say that I don't miss burgers because I can make them and I can find them. There's
Makes
wonderful
sense.
places for burgers right here.
Makes
Um,
sense.
Pizza is, as you know, nationally, everybody has something they call pizza.
Yeah.
And the Italians think that they have something special about it. I'm not quite sure I understand why, but the point is that while they do have a thing called pizza in Sweden and it's edible, right? There's
Yeah.
nothing wrong with it. It's a thing you can eat, but I think that because of that, I would have to choose pizza only because
Okay.
of that. But it doesn't
Okay.
stop me
Makes
from
sense.
grilling burgers and eating them all the time.
All right. All right. So, don't overthinking, but name 10 of your favorite
Oh my
musicians.
god. Okay. Um, Dick Dale, um,
Yeah.
and certainly, um, and the bands that I probably, you know, really connected with a lot as a teenager was the Who. Um,
Hmm.
but really, there's quite I'm tried to be not an expert about music. You learn
Yeah.
a
Okay.
lot, but I try not to have these deep analytical relationships with music. And you may be interested to know some of the other musicians that I've really there's a trumpeter, a jazz trumpeter named Freddie
Yeah.
Hubbard that I always really really liked. Um,
Sadly, jazz music never clicked to me for some
right. Well,
reason.
I was a trumpet player
And
for
Uncultured Swine.
yeah.
I don't know.
I was a trumpet player across many kinds of music, classical and
Okay.
jazz, and for quite a long time, and some rock too. And I came into contact,
Yeah.
that way. Let's see. Another one to go back to rock and roll is a guitarist, Adrian Gervitz, who the I guess the most famous band he was in was called the Baker Gervitz Army. These th- this is a guy that you if you're sitting around with a bunch of guitarists and they're talking about guitarists, and you say, "Yeah, I really like Adrian Gervitz," they all get quiet and look at you and say, "Oh, okay, so you know." Yeah. So
Right.
I came across it just because I was cruising through all the different weird little bands and found that some of them weren't weird little bands. They were actually incredibly, important. Um, so let's see. That's only a few. I guess you could probably turn toward many of the groups or concerns that we might consider to be political. I grew up. This is going to sound, kind of kooky, but I grew up with Joan Baez, and
Yeah.
so any song she ever sang, this
Yeah.
simply is a piece of my life. And
I understand.
yeah, so there's
Her
anyone
music is timeless.
right,
Her music is absolutely
and
timeless.
also was very relevant music of that particular time too. So
Yes.
and so therefore, that was kind of important. There's a number of other people that are simply childhood
Yes.
presence for me. So I would say, they're important to me. I don't know if favorite is the right word because there's no analysis there. There's no choosing.
Yeah.
They're just there. It is in your head. Um, for more recent things, I don't really keep up so much with the latest and greatest in music. I like to lag a little bit. I get
Yeah.
excited about
Yeah.
something after everybody else has shut up and is doing
Makes
something else.
sense.
Yeah,
Makes sense.
and same thing
You
with
can filter the trends out.
yeah.
You filter the trends out.
And I'm the same way with television. I'm watching shows that are 5 years old, 10 years old. I'm much happier that way.
Yeah.
Um, so I guess I can't complete a full 10. What's going to happen is after the interview, I'm going
Yeah.
to suddenly realize musicians that I
This
should
and
have
that.
said,
Yes.
um, and so I can guarantee that's going to happen actually. Um,
All right.
but
So
suffice to
I'm
say,
going
I
to cheat.
really I really like shit kicker rock and roll. I like really straightforward rock and roll.
I'm going to cheat and bring another question into this. But was Circle of Hands named after the Uriah Heep song?
Absolutely. In
All right.
fact,
So
it's
Uriah Heep,
yeah.
do they make the cut? Are they one of your favorites?
I love Uriah Heep. And I certainly have many of their albums, and my kids were taught to sing Sunrise from a
Yeah.
very early age in the car.
That's very
Yeah,
nice.
and so you can imagine that. Yes, I love them. I don't know about favorite. The favorite talk I don't get, but
Yeah.
yes, I like Uriah Heep very much. Circle of Hands as a title speaks very much to the game. But if you want to
That,
talk about their songs in terms of content, what relates to the game the most is actually on the same album, and it's a song called Tales, as in stories.
yes. Yes.
So that song and its content really would be the signifier for Circle of Hands. Um,
Okay. Okay. But Circle of Hands is a catchier name.
True, but it also applies to many many things in the game.
Indeed.
The
Yeah.
emergent properties that occur if people do start playing multiple characters. The properties that occur when that happens, which cannot really be, if I describe them to you, would say, oh well, that wouldn't happen. But if
Yeah.
you do it, then the title begins to take on a much stronger emotional impact for the people who do it.
Hmm.
So
Hmm.
so that's true. It is.